This week's theme is, how am I connected to our history? How is Jewish wisdom relevant in my life? And how can Jewish history inform our community's future? So basically, where do we go from here? I'm going to go through a summary of what we covered in the 5 classes, and then open it up to discussion. So in our first class, we talked about Judaism before the rabbis, the fact that there were both northern and southern kingdoms, and they had a unitary understanding of human existence. So what that means is that when they spoke of the breath of life, or the essence of a person, they meant the physical person. There was no concept beyond physical reality for human existence. And that was part of the reason that they spoke so much about their families and clans and tribes. It was that your larger identity was based on who you were related to. And it wasn't until the Greek Hellenists came into the scene that the concept of the soul came into Judaism. So the way that we read our Bible is highly influenced by that pagan idea. It's very interesting to me to recognize that it was not monotheists who brought forward the concept of the soul. In the second class, we talked about a Bissel of Bible, the documentary hypothesis, which I perhaps was rather confusing in how I described it, that there were political reasons for the redaction of multiple accounts of the same thing. So the reason that stories seem to have different accounts is that they are actual different accounts from different perspectives. And that religious choices were made to cover up the messy history of Israelite worship. If you ever see the traveling exhibit of the Dead Sea Scrolls, it comes along with a lot of items that were found in Israelite homes around the same time. And that includes a lot of figurines that we don't know what they were for. They were probably part of fertility worship. There was probably an understanding of God having a consort, and that it was the consort who brought forth fertility. And that different authors in the Bible had different agendas. So Leviticus, what we're reading now, is the priestly code, and the Deuteronomy retells the story of the Exodus from a different perspective in order to focus in on that perspective. There's also the E frame, Elohist, and the one that refers to God usually as Elohim, and the J frame because this was first thought of in German, which is the Hashem name, the Yud He Vav He, that refers to God that way. How we read the Bible is based on a long history of rabbinic interpretation. In our third class, we talked about the Talmud. It's a collection of Jewish thought from around 70 after the birth of Christ, or in the Common Era, to around 800 CE. Its first layer is the Mishnah, and the second layer is the Gemara. The Talmud either refers to the second layer or to the entire written text, and it's not meant for passive reception or merely as a law book. It creates a way to be Jewish and engage in the reality of your time with the wisdom of our sages throughout time. The way that a page of Talmud is on the page, it's not just these 2 layers. There's sections of commentary all around it. So it really is a way that Jews have connected themselves to the history and brought the tradition forward into their own time. In our fourth class, we talked about a bit of mysticism, the Kabbalah, as the reinvention of Jewish mysticism in the Middle Ages through today, how its seminal work is the Zohar, that basis of understanding of connection to the divine was altered and connected through Rabbi Isaac Luria in his creation theory, which connected how there was a space of God, that all of reality didn't exist, only God existed, and God had to make space for something other than God to exist. And that from that, we get the shattered vessels of the divine and the sparks that we are trying to open up and merge back into the oneness of the divine. And then Hasidism brings that forward into the early modern period, is when Hasidism started as a way of connecting all of this really dense mystical understanding that had before that really been only known by rabbis and the elite, into a way that was connected to all of the people around them and gave a psychological spin on it. So this was perhaps the most difficult concept to introduce in a single class, as it is so different from our received rational modern Reform tradition. And then our last class was on modern Judaism, beginning with an explanation of Jewish emancipation, the origins of Reform Judaism, the stages of Reform Judaism, brief discussion of some of the organizations involved, including the World Union for Progressive Judaism, which actually includes both here in the United States, both the Reform movement and the Reconstructing Judaism movement. And then a bit about the 1999 Pittsburgh Principles, which is every so often the rabbis of the Reform movement set forth principles from which the movement moves forward. So today is an open discussion on what you have taken from the class and what areas you're interested in exploring in the future. So we have gone through a bit of Jewish history. There's a lot more that can be learned about that. Jewish worldviews, ideas, and concepts, sometimes described of as philosophy or theology. The annual calendar can be understood in multiple ways: the historical, the ritual, and the personally meaningful way. Sefirot HaOmer, which I introduced last night, using the Sefirot to guide personal growth. Spiritual direction is holding space for a smaller group's soul journeys. So really being intentional in a conversation about how we're moving through the world. And then prayer, understanding prayers, exploring how to make prayer personally meaningful. And of course, the glue that holds every Jewish community together, social gatherings. So I open it up to your reflections either on where we have been in this series of courses, your thoughts about the way that the courses, the sessions ran, or what things have piqued your interest for the future. Or if you have questions about these bullet points, because not all of them are.
I'm thinking.
So I can tell you that my idea, when I first presented an idea to do a series of classes, my first idea was to do a series of classes on prayers, to both do an overview of the Jewish prayer formula and the primary prayers that would be in all services, whether it's Shabbat or weekday service. And then I was asked to pivot to doing something that was more a broader overview of Judaism. And this was the series that I came up with for that. So it's, I can tell you that it's much harder to do a broader series than to pick one topic to focus on. With a series of classes, that gives you a little bit of time to adjust what you've already explained, to explain it perhaps in a way that connects with people better. And that really my goal with this was to pique your interest and think about ways in which you might want to go forward in either the book club or with Rabbi Len in terms of diving into the richness of our tradition.
Okay. I have a question that has absolutely nothing to do with any of this, but morphing into it. Jason Moss gave a very good talk a couple of weeks ago about transactional Judaism. And what, unfortunately, he's finding out is that less and less people, even those who belong to a synagogue, go to Shabbat. And there's more and more people that come to the temple for prayers once a year.
Mm-hmm.
How do we grow temples through community, introducing prayer as part of it, but not making prayer, and this is going to sound weird, the most important part? Because people like, I'm going to use Bill Joseph for an example. The man is totally dedicated to CVD. He likes Shabbat, but it's not that important to him. I find the community is becoming more and more important in our fractured society.
Yeah.
So I understand, and I know that Chabad is very successful with prayer, and those that like it go to Chabad. I myself could not sit through a 3-hour Seder. I could not sit through, I like joyful services. I like to feel good about Shabbat, but I need different motives of Shabbat. And I think social gatherings, to me, are more and more important as people live farther away from their families, as people get older or younger. I mean, like Mickey and Lindy, they Mickey's family is in Pennsylvania. So, I mean, I think it's a new world for not only Judaism, but all religions.
Right. So you take me to my final slide. Which is, how do you want to use Jewish wisdom to support the community's future? And these two books speak to just that question. The more general audience book is Rethinking Synagogues, A New Vocabulary for Congregational Life, which is by Lawrence Hoffman. And it is, it connects deeper into or more broadly into the strategies that he wrote about with his co-authors in the first book, Sacred Strategies, Transforming Synagogues from Functional to Visionary. So the main thing is that if you're just a social gathering, then there's no reason to choose a synagogue life over any other type of social gathering or community connection that you might find. So that connecting in that vision and something that speaks to people's depths in addition to community socialness is I think what compels people. It's not just Chabad that is reaching people and having larger services. In the Los Angeles area, there's a lot of independent synagogues that have sprung up based on vision and intention that is both open to a wide variety of Jews and also deeply rooted in a progressive understanding of Judaism. So yes, if people are just looking for a particular traditional style of Judaism, there is plenty of ways for them to get that. But if there is something about being Jewish as a progressive Jew, then there are ways for a community to gather around that and to really think about what is it, in all ways, what is it that we are trying to accomplish?